takriban ajira ama nafasi za kazi 1840 ziliweza kuweza kubuniwa ama kupatikana. Basi swala hilo liliweza kuzua mjadala mkali sana katika taifa hili, katika mitandao na kila mahali. Kwa hivyo ningependa kwanza nifafanue kwamba takwimu hizo ziweza kutolewa na the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Na kama tunavyofahamu ni kwamba shirika hili ni shirika linaloaminika zaidi kwa kutoa takwimu hakiki. Na sio tu katika taifa la Kenya, lakini inaaminika hata ughaibuni. Maanake pia mashirika ya kimataifa huamini takwimu zinazotoka kwenye Kenya Bureau Standards of Statistics. Kwa hivyo hilo ni la kwanza ningependa kueleza. Na takwimu hizo ziliweza kuzinduliwa tarehe 23 mwezi wa Aprili mwaka 2019. Na bila shaka nadhani itakuwa ni vyema kwa yeyote yule aliye na tashwishi kuhusu takwimu hizo kuweza kutembelea tovuti yao na kuweza kuona hata zaidi.
This is me headed on. And here is my letter. The letter that says my job is over. End of this month, I won't be coming back. And I know this is happening to someone out there. I'm a mom. Everything is on me basically. Rent, a nanny, who also means will also get affected with this. She's also jobless. Then we need a roof over our heads and there's school fees to be followed. I know a friend, a cousin, a sister might be going to share your story. You need to think, and we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, what's going on? We've been paying our tax diligently. Most companies are retrenching. We can say we will be back, but how? Who will hire you when, with this hard economic time, and they're having to close down because of borders?
So that was a video that was trending a couple of days ago under the hashtag I lost my job KE, just basically telling the stories of thousands of Kenyans out there who've lost their jobs. So essentially, we have over 7 million Kenyans who are jobless, and Kenyans' unemployment rate is at 9.3%, 9.3. Well, that is according to a report by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. There have been suggestions that employed youth should be given a monthly hardship allowance of 3,000 shillings. That is, if a proposal to amend the Employment Act and Social Assistance Act is approved by Parliament. The amendments are being fronted by two members of Parliament, Saboti Member of Parliament Caleb Amisi and Kiminini Member of Parliament Didmas Baraza, and are meant to cushion the youth and the unemployed against the harsh economic times. On the other hand, Starehe Member of Parliament Charles Jago proposed a bill to reduce the retirement age to 50. He believes the proposal will help create employment opportunities for college leavers. But the question we are asking this evening on The Big Story is the amendment and the proposed bill the answer to unemployment in Kenya? What do we need to do? You have 7 million unemployed Kenyans. Unemployment rate is at 9.3. Those figures are not encouraging at all. And that is what we're talking about this evening on The Big Story. Later on in this bulletin, in this show, we will be speaking to Caleb Amisi, who's the Member of Parliament Saboti. We will be speaking as well to Dr. Nashon Moitelel, Kipra board member. But for now, let's bring in our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, who's joining us from City Center. Sophia, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening, Linda. Indeed, it is a big problem. Unemployment in Kenya, that it continues to be a scourge, is indisputable. And you talk about that 9.3%. That was last year. According to a World Bank report, it's projected to rise this year to 10.5%. So 7 million Kenyans will see that number rise in as far as people who do not have jobs here in the country. And in as far as that report is concerned, in fact, they were breaking it down, the matrix, the unemployment matrix in the country, talking about just 6% being the Kenyans that are employed, formal employment, and then you have 49% at the informal sector and 47% working in agriculture. Now, you may remember last year the government talked about the economy growing by 6.3% and that some 840,000 jobs were created. But this World Bank report says that a vast majority of these jobs were low quality, so that yes, there are jobs created, but how much are they offering and what do they mean for the person who now says they are employed? So low quality jobs and some of the challenges we are seeing, even in the past, the video we played earlier that went viral. Others have in the past where employment opportunities have come up, say in a hotel. I remember once on Mombasa Road, and you have hundreds of Kenyans showing up just for one position. So that just speaking to the desperation that many Kenyans are feeling around the country. So this evening to talk a little bit more, including those proposals we're hearing from some members of parliament, whether to pay some stipend to the unemployed youth or reduce the age of retirement to 50. Is that the way to go? I have with me Ronnie Sumba, who is the immediate former chair of the Youth Fund, to talk more about this. Thank you for making time for us. Let's begin with, it clearly is a big problem. I wonder for you, what you see being the factors that fuel unemployment in Kenya.
Thank you, Sophia, for having this very important conversation, because a lot of young people are looking for opportunities. We gave them a promise that if they go to school and sharpen their skills, they will be able to get employment. But the challenge is that the economy is not producing enough jobs. You ask a very fundamental question, which I think goes down to the basics of economics. How do we create jobs? Jobs are a function of production. So the more we produce in different sectors, the more employment we create. So because we are not creating enough jobs, it speaks to the fact that we are not producing enough. Why aren't we producing enough? Because we are not investing in understanding our consumption patterns. So today, if we say, where do we get our seats from?
Yeah.
The seats that we put into hotels, into conference rooms, into our offices, we buy them from China. Now, that is our consumption, that seat, that chair. If we were to produce those seats in Kenya, then we would produce jobs.
Yeah.
So we need then to have a very serious conversation amongst ourselves. I'm not aware of any scientific engagement that government has had to say what are our consumption patterns. Therefore, what do we need to be producing? And producing can even be in service.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have, our fastest growing sector is the service sector.
Yeah.
So that is retail, that is supermarkets, that is hotels. How much are we investing in growing jobs in the service space? Because obviously that is what we are producing a lot.
Yeah.
In agriculture, how much are we investing in producing jobs in agriculture?
Yeah.
So we need to have this conversation contextually in the context of production. What are the factors that drive production? So jobs is one. Secondly is capital. We need to have affordable capital to allow the third factor of production, which is entrepreneurs, to create those jobs.
Yeah.
So we need to then have a conversation about how much we are supporting our entrepreneurs. So forget the big corporations. We are looking at SMEs. How are we supporting our SMEs?
Yeah.
We all know that today SMEs are complaining that they're hurting. Those who are involved in trade, for example, are hurting. Their products are stuck at the port. Why? Because the system is broken and it's not facilitating them. If you ask them about taxes, they are being buried under the burden of taxes.
Yeah.
If you ask them about access to finance, it's unaffordable for them. If you ask them about market, there are barriers to entry because markets, whether it is in agriculture, in whichever you look at it, are controlled by cartels. So again, there's no holistic approach. I know there's a lot of conversations around reforms in the SME space, but the guys in the streets, the guys in Mudhurwa, the guys in River Road, they're not feeling it.
Yeah. And there has been concern that as much as we have all these numbers that Kenya has improved in ease of doing business, it's not being felt by the ordinary Kenyans. But there are those who would look at you, you've just left office, and ask, what did you do? What was that significant contribution in development of that space, especially for the youth, to get employment, to be empowered?
And Sophia, you raise a good point before I go into the youth issue. Ease of doing business. It's ease for who?
Yeah.
I think the focus has been on ease of doing business for the big boys, while there has not been a specific index to measure ease of doing business for the small guys. And I think, whether you look at regulation, licensing, whether you look at taxes, whether you look at all the requirements that a company requires. If you start a company today, the returns that you have to make will bury you in the first year. Labor returns, there are like 250 things you have to do in the first year. So we need to be a bit more friendly and say, okay, it's good to have the ease of doing business index for the big boys, because we want as much FDI coming into the country for indirect investments. But we also need to have another category for ease of doing business for the small guys.
Yeah.
In terms of what we've done, and I worked with a lot of those small guys in the last 3 years, and I thank God for that opportunity. The pain that SMEs are having, which we tried to address, are largely financial. So they're saying, I've started my small business. It is now beginning to grow, but my orders are growing, but I don't have money. Can I access affordable money? So we provided this affordable money. There are a lot of questions about how easy it is to access it, but I'm sure that's not a conversation for today. But we tried to make it much easier for people, and we tried to make it as widespread as possible. At the end of the term, we had impacted 7,500 SMEs, 1,500 directly youths every year. So that's about 300,000. But as you can see, we have 7 million guys unemployed. Every year, Youth Fund is doing 100,000. That's a drop in the ocean. You still have another 6.9 million who do not have anywhere to go. So I think the impetus is on us to see how do we accelerate creation of jobs through SMEs. So if I were to give $1 million bob to an SME through Youth Fund, I need to hold them to account to deliver 5 new jobs every year, so that when I know I am financing 105,000 youth in a year, that really easily translates into 500,000 youth every year.
Okay. So let's talk about the proposals now we're getting from some of the legislators, one of whom will be talking to my colleague Linda later on the show. He's talking about some money going to the youth, the unemployed, every month, some 3,000 in 4 months, it's 12,000. Is that the way to go? The Budget Chair Committee, who got to listen to the Member of Parliament, Amisi, said they pretty much said it's not going to work. We can't afford it. In terms of fiscal balancing of our books, not possible. But that we're getting to that place to say, if you're unemployed, okay, I'll give you some money. Will that even motivate anyone to go out looking for a job?
Honorable Amisi is my friend, and he knows very well that young people don't want free money. They want jobs. They want to be productive. They want to put their skills to good use. When we go into that direction, basically we are becoming a welfare state. We will then begin to encourage. Why would my son then go to school? They know when I finish school, I'll be getting 15,000 bob stipend every month. So I don't think it's the way to go. It's a good thought. I'm sure his heart is in the right place, but I don't think it's the way to go. Meanwhile, we can't afford it. If you take the 7 million unemployed youth, multiply that by 15K every month, that's our entire budget, quite literally. So it's definitely not the way to go. I wouldn't support that. I think what Parliament needs to do now is to look at how to develop a Marshall Plan, because you need legislative support to break down the barriers that we've talked about, whether it is for small businesses or whether it is for people looking for jobs. We need Parliament to question the executive on where it is putting its money, because its money needs to be invested in sectors that are fast growing. Already, we are talking about the future of jobs. The future of jobs is shifting, so we will need to start thinking about reskilling people and upskilling those who are already digital. We are not having that conversation. So in another 10 years, this situation is going to double. It is going to be that much worse. So what I think Honorable Amisi, Honorable Jaguar, who has also asked for, retirement age to be brought down, need to be doing is they need to be putting the executive to account to say, what is the Marshall Plan? In 2007, I think, the government, at the time under President Kibaki, came up with a Marshall Plan. And we were clear. We are going to invest in this so that we can be able to produce this, which will lead us to this many number of jobs. Right. Whether it worked is a matter of conjecture, but there was a plan. And so the people who are out in the streets could look back and say, there is a plan. Yeah. Today, if I ask anyone out there on the streets, what do you think is the plan for government to produce jobs? They will know. I don't know. Yeah. And I've been in government. So we need a very cogent plan that maybe it's there, I don't know. But the people who are supposed to know it's there, don't know.
Don't know. So then talk to me, because perhaps those in government would argue there's 0.3% going to job programs. You have the affirmative action, for instance, 30% of whatever tenders, youth and women and all of that. What, as especially Parliament, who are part of the budget making processes in their purview, should do to ensure that for the youth then the opportunities are better?
I mean, 0.3% is a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can take that as a short-term measure, perhaps, you know, create, I don't know, 100,000 jobs. Mm-hmm. But really what Parliament should be doing is holding executive to account and say, for every £1 million shillings invested in whatever, in road construction, in dams, in constructing of hospitals, where are the jobs? So I think Parliament needs to shift the conversation and say, expenditure is going to be pegged to job creation. I mean, in the US, if you look at statistics, you've quoted the US, if you look at statistics in the US, they account for jobs created for every $1 million. And every sector has its number. They have an index. If it is a service sector, if it is agriculture, if it is finance, they know that if we put $1 million in this sector, this number of jobs are going to be created. So in any 1 year, that's why they can project and say, we will do 6 million jobs. Because they know if we then invest $100 million in this specific sector, it will drive jobs growth. We don't have that scientific approach to creating jobs here, and that's what Parliament needs to do.
And even when you look at the World Bank report, and that the jobs the government says it has created, 49% in formal sector, 47% agriculture, just 6% formal. So the question becomes, even with the jobs that are being created, the quality of those jobs, the education system, who are we churning out from the schools, from the universities, but also as we churn them out, is the pace meeting the expectation as far as the need for the job, the uptake?
I think it's really a tragedy, because for kids who are in school today, there's no motivation to work hard, because there is no guarantee that you will get a job. And that is why you will see even, you know, the rate of people who are pursuing PhDs in our generation is declining from what it was before. Because before, and our parents used to tell us, you know, as soon as you finished college, you actually found a GK waiting for you outside, because you were guaranteed of a job. Today, there's no that guarantee, and therefore, less kids are motivated to finish school, because it's pointless. If we can only provide 6% formal jobs, there is a problem in the rate at which we are producing jobs, which takes me back to the original conversation, which is the jobs is a factor of production, and production is a factor of consumption. We need to have a more scientific approach and say, what are we consuming? How are we consuming it? Where are we getting those things we are consuming? You know, today even fruits we are eating from Egypt. Because why? I mean, really? And agriculture is one of our fastest growing or biggest sectors of the economy. We need to be a bit more strategic. I think there needs to be a more a deliberate plan. Obviously, the president has said manufacturing is one of the big four, and agriculture. Those two should be massive, and housing. Those three should be massive drivers of jobs. So we hope that once the wheels start turning significantly, the jobs will come. Meanwhile, we still have 7 million almost hopeless young people on the streets asking for jobs.
And finally, briefly, the proposal to reduce retirement age to 50, already its government is struggling with pensions as it stands. Feasible for you, tenable?
I was told the pensions have piled up since, I think, 20 years. Not tenable. And, I think Honorable Jagwa is coming from a good place. It just won't address the situation. Because even if today we were to retire public servants above the age of 50, how many jobs will we create in government? Would be more than 100,000, 200,000. Still does not fill the gap. So I don't think it's tenable. In any event, there are skills within government that require age. Having served in government, I know that there are skills in government. I mean, for example, judges. Globally, the older you become, the better. You know, the more suitable you become for some of those jobs. So we can't discount and say, oh, it's a difficult conversation to have. You can't just say, let's cut it off at 50. There are very productive skills within government who are even 60, 65.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia.
Roni Osumba, immediate former chair, Youth Development Fund. So at the end of the day, bottom line becomes that even for that proposal around retirement age, there could be an argument. It's disenfranchising against those who have invested to get to the prime. As some say, life now begins at 50, Linda.
Thank you, Sophia. So, two suggestions. One, let's reduce the retirement age. Two, we can give the youth a stipend of 3,000 shillings. Let's bring in Caleb Hamisi, Member of Parliament Saboti. Is one of the two members of Parliament who came up with this amendment. In a couple of minutes, we'll also be speaking to Dr. Nashon Moitelel, Kipra board member. Mheshimiwa is joining us from our City Centre studio. Mheshimiwa, thank you for joining us on The Big Story. So explain to Kenyans where this idea came from, that we should get to pay unemployed youth 3,000 shillings. That is, if your proposal goes through, absorbed interns will be entitled to a monthly stipend of about 25,000. So where did this come from?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. I think, first of all, we need to address the misconception around the whole thing. Social assistance is not free money. It is well enshrined in the Constitution, established as a social security under Article 43, sub-Article 1E.
Tell Xavier, huyu anamsikia, he can hear Xavier.
The group of members of the society who are actually, supposed to benefit out of a social assistance by the government. So this is a whole act that was established, but the only thing is that it has not been able to be operationalized. And the reason is that the way it was enacted, it did not give the parameters of how, for example, who are these unemployed youths, and how can you determine who is unemployed, and how can you even get the data of these people, and how much money are we talking about in terms of the assistance. We have Pesa kwa Wazee, which it is actually coming from this very act. These are just some of the vulnerable members of our society, the Wazees, the disabled, the unemployed youths. It is well stipulated in the same act. So it is very clear, and it is not supposed to be free money. It is an assistance to vulnerable members of our society. Now, the Constitution clearly explains an employed person as a youth who is between 18 years and 35 years. There are various statistics, there are various studies that have shown that in our current situation as a country, we are facing a population of close to between 30 and 45% of our population being the young people below 35 years and above 18 years who are unemployed. That is quite phenomenal, and I think this is a global menace. Youth unemployment is not identical to Kenya alone. Many countries have approached it differently, and I've looked at various nations, how they have handled youth unemployment bulge. For example, Argentina, they have their program, in which case the participants of this program, apart from getting stipend from the government, they actually take part in the program of the government. In our case, the youth who are participating in this program of being assisted by the government, they will take, in terms of census programs like Huduma number registration, IBC registration, they take part for free because they get assistance from the government. Secondly, I've also looked at South Africa. They also have their own youth unemployment fund. They have, we have Australia. They call it New Startup Fund. Of course, the amount is high because of their GDP is a bit higher. And the other countries have approached it different, so it is not solely identical to this country alone. I mean, countries are struggling and grappling with these issues, and they're coming up with policies and implementing them. So in our situation as a nation, I thought that there are many young people, because some of these people, I listened to the chairman of Youth Enterprise Fund earlier, who is my very good friend, Bwana Roni. some of the policymakers really need to come from the background of being elected, because it is us people who have been elected who really know who the people we are representing. We visit them, we get calls, we interact with the youth on a daily basis.
Okay.
We know exactly there are a number of young people. Let me just finish this one. There are a number of young people who just need a small amount of money to move from one town to another in search of opportunity, who just need a small amount to even search, if they talk about talent development, they just want to move from one place to go and record their CDs in a studio, and they go back and they develop their talent. There are various ways that this young person just need a stipend, a very little help from the government to search for opportunity. That is not free money. It is an assistant to a needy situation.
It is not free money, it is an assistance. I love what you just said, that you're a representative of your own people. And Mheshimiwa, so that essentially means that from where you sit, the best help you can give youth who are unemployed in this country is 3,000 shillings, and you go ahead to say that that will ensure that they take part in different activities that touch on the government. What can 3,000 shillings do? Where is this money going to come from? You as a legislator, surely you should sit down at some point and look for ways of creating this employment. It's not there. How sustainable is giving the youth 3,000 shillings every single month, really?
Yeah, first of all, also there is also a correction I need to make, that people have not even gone through the act itself. Even from the Principal Act, Kenyans are so ignorant, and I'm surprised even the policymakers, the people at the helm of leadership, they do not even know the existence of such an act. People don't take time to read our constitution, basically. That this act in itself, it does not even give that you need to give 3,000. It is as a suggestion that, assuming maybe the population is this much, and then maybe at a current level of population, it can be 3,000. Now that figure is empirical. I mean, we can have a lesser figure of people who are in need. And remember, just the way we have pesa kwa wazee, it is not all wazees who are in need of that money. With due respect, the retired president, Honorable Mwai Kibaki, is an old man. He does not need pesa kwa wazee as much as he's a mzee. You know, as other cases, there are also youths who are unemployed, but it does not mean they are needy because they are unemployed. So if you look at those statistics, there is what we call a social assistance authority that is supposed to be established. Now, this authority is supposed to give us the statistic currently who are the youth, not just unemployed, who would actually need that help. And the figure can even go to up to 20,000, depending on the performance of the economy, depending on the number of the youth you are talking about. The figure can even be 50,000, depending on the statistics that come up. So this 3,000, it was just a suggestion on some number that is not even, been approved. But the question is, how much can an economy sustain this number of youths who are unemployed? And we are not saying we are unable to give other suggestions on how to. Many young legislators have come up with bills, very wonderful bills, to try and grapple with this issue of unemployment. And creating unemployment is not even through a bill. It is about the government and and how the leaders who make our policies and legislation. For example, our president has focused on manufacturing. That is one area that is fundamentally going to kill this problem that you've had perennial of youth unemployment.
Okay.
Countries that have also managed, like we are talking about Singapore, if you allow me to finish, like Singapore. Singapore at some point was grappling with our situation, our economic situation, this country 50 years ago. We are at par. Why have we not learned? What miracle did Singapore do? They took advantage of the geopolitical location, and they tapped into the global flow of income, and that's how they have been able to kill unemployment. When the money is flowing in the economy, the investors, there is a lot of investment, the companies and the institutions are flourishing. So the creation and the killing of unemployment, it is a multifaceted. It is not a single member of parliament just coming up with a legislation. It is a multifaceted approach by the government and institutions that we need to approach it as a whole, not just as a single legislation.
I hear you. I hear you that we need to approach it as a whole, but the specific question that I asked you is for your people, the people that you represent. What is this one thing that you put on the ground to say, this is how I will help address the issue of unemployment? Apart from saying, we will give unemployed youth 3,000 shillings. A, I don't think that is sustainable. B, how many unemployed youth do we have? About 7 million. How sustainable is that in the Republic of Kenya? Is there any other long-term solution that we can put on the ground? Those are the questions that really are ringing in my mind. But allow me to take our first break here on The Big Story. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Then we'll speak to Nashon Moitalel. Keep